All right. Hey, you guys, what's up? This is Daryl coming at you from Holyrad Studio, Soho. Welcome to Fish Out of Water. It's going to be our monthly Holyrad podcast where we decided to create mostly out of popular demand. I mean, I can't tell you how many times people have come up to us and said, damn, you guys really should start a podcast, which is a weird thing to say because I think that so much of what people want is just to have access, I think, to some of the conversations that go on between the partners, the staff, the members, and some really incredible insights happen in these intimate moments. And while we do our best to be accessible to our followers and to our community, I think there's something really special about just inviting people into our conversation. So with that in mind, we hope to shine a light on all things Holyrad, give a really intimate experience about how much we put into this community and how much it means to us and how personal it really is. But more importantly, hopefully we can explore some new interests and new conversations and bring some great leaders into this wonderful white table and kind of see what happens. So I won't drag it on, but today is going to be our very first podcast, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm going to be the guest. It's a little strange to be the host and the guest at the same time, but we really wanted to do it because my origin story is the Holyrad origin story. So as we've grown in the last 5 years, I think it's more important than ever to remember our roots and to invite all the people that are just discovering us today into why we exist. Mm-hmm. So, like I said, I'm Daryl, and right now I have with me my two amazing partners and some of the closest friends and family that I've ever had. To my right is Elena, and to my left is Saskia, and I'll let you guys introduce yourselves.
Yeah, hi, I'm Saskia. I'm the Director of Content and Operations at Holyrad. I've known Daryl for 20 years at this point. Yeah, I mean, since I was a toddler. So from my time living in DC and our moms being best friends and us growing up together and doing the parties on the weekend with our families and everything. And and then I moved back to the UK, but then I reunited with Daryl when I came to New York to go to Tisch. And I've been working at Holyrad for the past 3 years.
Coming up on 3 years.
Coming up on 3 years.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah. No, definitely a family affair. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So who's this girl over here?
Hi, I'm Elena, and I'm the Director of Research Development here at Holyrad. And I've known Daryl for 11, 12 years. Went to high school all the way back. So I'll never forget the day that you called me.
Oh, yeah.
August 2014. And you told me, so I do. I remember exactly. I was just in my bedroom.
Yeah.
And I remember having to sit down being like, oh, okay, this is not just a, hey, blah, 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 this is what I'm doing. It's a really important moment. And you told me that you were going to quit Shoptiques. Not that I'm thinking about it. You'd already made the decision and you were kind of calling me. That. Yeah. You were like, okay. And what next? And you basically were like, I don't want to work 80 hours a week for somebody else. I've built this great thing there, but I'm 23 and this cannot be it.
Yeah. No, I think it's really, to give it some context, it was about 2014, right?
Yeah.
Summer of 2014. And, it's I am a millennial, right? Right smack dab in the center. And so I grew up inside of the crash of the economy, right? So institutional trust was crap. Getting a BFA from even an institution like NYU wasn't necessarily what you would consider a money maker. So when I was offered a position at an incredible startup called Shoptiques right out of university, a couple days before I graduated, by the way, I'm talking health insurance, 401k, a pretty good entry salary, and a job. Do you know how many people in my university, not let alone my program, who are like, holy shit, I'm about to graduate and I have literally no idea how to make a living, what that looks like, and where I'm going to go.
Yeah.
You know, your community is all of a sudden not there anymore. Your resources, especially as a photographer, aren't there anymore. So I took that job because it felt like what I was supposed to do.
Yeah.
But it was still a startup, and I was working in fast fashion. And the founder was an incredible woman. Her name was Olga. Classic American dream story. I mean, the moment I met her, the story she told me was about how she made it to the United States. And it started with, I was so poor growing up that my neighbor ate my pet dog. And I'm actually not even exaggerating there. So she moved to the United States, didn't know English, taught herself English, modeled through her years as an undergrad somewhere, I think at Wesleyan as a mathematician. She ended up at Harvard Business School, but let's not forget the Harvard Business School way is suffering equals success, right? And so she came to me one day, and her grandmother who raised her was dying. And she looked at me and she said, as a justification for why I should be working harder, she goes, Daryl, my grandmother is dying right now and I'm choosing to be here because this is more important. And when she said that to me, I was like, not to me, no. No, that's not more important. I will have to respectfully disagree with that one. So it was kind of that along the combination, I think, of like my father's story of being forced, I think, a little bit as a first generation, firstborn Korean American son. The obligation to his family to become very financially stable meant that he didn't have the opportunity to pursue the things that he was most interested in, most passionate about. And so I was very fortunate for him to, and my mom, to always be incredibly supportive of my interest as long as I put my heart and soul into it and I cared about it. So I called you, walked out of the office. I called you and I was like, I can't do this. I was working like sometimes 17-hour days, 7 days a week, making less money by the hour than I was when I was freelancing as a photographer at NYU. And I was like, this doesn't.
And I know
really
you were doing
add
the
up.
math in your head, and you were like, no, what?
Yeah.
How is this possible? I have to try this.
Yeah.
And you'd been doing that. I mean, in college, you were always, I remember you would never come home, and I'd always be so sad. Every time I'd be coming from Florida, I'd be like, Daryl. And you're like, I can't, I'm working.
Yeah.
And because you would be
grinding.
You would be taking nightlife photos. You were constantly like, if you weren't at class,
I was
working.
Working, yeah. I mean, New York is a wonderful place to kind of to force you, I think, a little bit to hustle, because even from the privileged place that I was coming in, I mean, I still had to make a living. You know, that's $250,000 to go to that university, and that's no joke. So the cool thing about getting a BFA in photography is that you have a trade, you have a skill.
Yeah. Exactly.
So you become a service.
Yeah, you have a service, you know. So I was shooting nightlife photos at Webster Hall. I was taking headshots for like the up and coming talent at like some of the major like modeling agencies. I was interning as much as I could, and I was taking classes all throughout the summer because I took a medical leave my freshman year after experiencing a pretty severe spout of depression, and I came back and had to in order to graduate on time, I had to be full-time for the rest of those years. Yeah, it was a lot.
So going back from that moment, like, what were the next steps that you took? Like,
well, I was very fortunate in my last year of university to take a class that I hope that everybody takes. It's called the Business of Art. It was an elective at the time, and the only point of the class was to learn the business of art. Seems to me that that's pretty freaking important before you graduate, you know. And it was really insightful. And the only job that you had for the class was to come up with your final project, which had to be either an art show, a residency application, a master's degree application, or a grant application. But it could be anything really. Okay. And so my idea was actually out of the urgency of my need that I was going to lose my studio space, I was going to lose my equipment, I was going to lose my community as soon as I graduated. There's no, like, I think every Tishy gets 1 6-week period that they can call in to use the facilities. Okay, that's it. That's $250,000. That's all you get, right? So I was like, all right, well, I think this is going to be a problem. So I kind of took the existing culture of sharing space, I think, that has pervasively existed in New York City as being such an expensive place to live, with roommates for a house, an apartment, but also for artists. I mean, like, the shared studio space is not something I invented, right? But it was something that I knew could be improved upon. And so I created this concept where I would like live upstairs and downstairs would be this like shared studio space. And all of a sudden I'd have other artists, coming and shooting, and I'd be able to create everything that I was going to lose. But, one thing led to another. The stable job came around. Like the rest of the things that I did at NYU, they went in storage underneath my bed at my mom's house in Maryland.
Yeah.
So when I quit, let's not forget, I'm not a planner, I'm a doer.
Yeah.
So I called my dad, and I was like, I'm literally contributing to global warming, slave labor. Fast fashion is one of the worst things that I could be putting my energy into. I'm not making enough of a living to even justify, because I made more money when I was on a freelancer, so it just all lined up and I quit. And so the reasons that I quit weren't about the plan ahead. It was about that if I was 22, 23 at the time, no kids, no mortgage, in great health, have both my parents, have my brother, I have all the support, and my life is not going to get any easier. I'm not going to have any less responsibilities than I do in that moment.
Yeah.
So if I'm going to take a risk on myself, the aha moment for me, I think, was taking advantage of having nothing to lose.
Yeah.
And so I quit, and then remembered about that little 2-credit class I took, and dusted off the business plan and just full on went for it.
Can you tell us a bit about the first space in Bushwick?
35 Meadow.
A lot of people think that was my first location.
No, it was actually the place.
Tiny little office
where Anna has her tattoo studio.
Oh my God.
So I think it was 77 Troutman, something like
it's
that.
Troutman. It's Troutman. It's off the Jefferson stop.
Off the Jefferson stop on the L.
Yeah.
And, one of my professors, Adita at Tisch, I was taking her class. I wasn't doing well, by the way. She was really upset. She looked at me and she said, if you're not getting up every single day at 9 o'clock, you have a 9 to 5, and taking your artistry seriously, you're not an artist. And that always stuck in my head. So I was like, if I'm going to wake up in my apartment and not even put my pants on, I'm not going to feel like I'm working. Yeah. So, it actually wasn't until I tried to be a freelancer again and really felt the difficulty of being able to afford studio space for my personal work, but also for the work that I was getting hired for, that made me realize I need an office. So I didn't have any freaking money. I have savings to my name, but I didn't really want to spend it yet. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna try and find a really cheap studio. So the only studio that I could find wasn't even a studio. It used to be a men's urinal bathroom that they decided to give me access to, that I literally had to paint. I was on my hands and knees in the dead of winter. There was no heat in this room. I was shivering, and I was scrubbing an old bathroom floor, and I had one of those moments where I was like why am I
holding the business plan in the hand?
Just shaking and shivering, eating ramen, but that struggle was so necessary, I think, for me to problem solve, and I just was so adamant about all of the work that I put into my career. I mean, my dad handed me a camera when I was 10 years old, and it has been my addiction and obsession ever since. There was never a moment of what's Daryl gonna do? Everybody knew that I was gonna go to school for photo. It was never even a question. So I think that's something that is beautiful about pursuing your passion, is that it's a never-ending, ever-energizer battery. Because you're passionate about something, you're gonna keep getting up and you're not gonna quit. So I found the business plan, I think, once I realized that it wasn't gonna work in that bathroom.
Yeah. And so the second, I guess, location was really the first location to most people. Yeah. Which was?
So, I guess you could call it our first location, because that little bathroom was really more about just me having an office as a freelancer.
It wasn't a shooting space.
Yeah. Because I wanted to take myself seriously. I wanted to get up every day and put on an outfit and go to work and set an intention, but it wasn't translating. And so I realized that if I could figure out a way to get access to a studio, all of a sudden, anywhere from $900 to $2,000 a day I was putting into paid and unpaid work for me to get my career off the ground, I was going to be able to actually make it, because the numbers aren't going to add up. I think the daily cost of just existing and breathing in New York has got to be a couple $100s a day. You know what I'm saying? So after you get a budget from a client, you pay everybody out a decent salary because everybody deserves to be paid for their work, right? I pay out all of my bills.
You rent equipment.
I run equipment.
What are you left with?
I rent the studio.
Yeah, what are you left with?
I'm left with a negative number, girls. I'm left with a zero, negative 0. So it just was never gonna. It's just not possible. So I was not interested, I think, in those traditional routes, right? I didn't want to be on set working for other big macho photographers.
You learned that with Shock Tees. You don't want to be anybody.
No, I didn't want to be anybody's. I didn't want to be anybody's employee. I want to be my own boss. I wanted to be in charge of my own life, and so it just. The timing was also everything in 2014, right?
Yeah, I mean, let's not forget that was the rise of Uber and Airbnb, and all of a sudden this concept of like, if I own a car and I don't have anything to do from 3 to 7, I can get in my car and I can make some money. Yeah. Or I am not home, I can rent it out. Like all of a sudden that became not only something, I mean, sharing has always been there, but it became mainstream. I mean,
even with listing platforms.
Yeah, I mean, there'd always been Craigslist.
Isn't going to be rented out for a month by the same person.
Yeah, I mean, even Craigslist.
It needs a rota. Yeah.
But you know what it was? It's that there was this already existing sort of like points of aha, right? It's like, okay, well, there's a commercial version of Airbnb, and this history of New York City artists and like sharing space, and there's this this business plan that I came up with. Like I just kind of connected those dots and thought, you know what, like I don't know if this is gonna work, but I'm gonna see if it does. So I did something kind of interesting. I took my life savings and some money from like graduation, I think, and I put it all on a 6-month down payment for a corner storefront unit in Bushwick off of the Morgan stop on the L. And I was like, it was a little bit out of my budget because I wanted something cheap, right? But I thought about it. I was like, all right, but if I get a storefront, all of a sudden, I'm not going to just rent to other photographers.
No,
I can also rent to events. Who knows what? Everybody needs access to space in New York.
Everyone's a storefront.
And with that little bit of research, I was just like, let's try this out. So put the down payment on the space. I had 6 months of runway to get this to work, right? And then I was going to basically have no money to my name. I was going to have to move New York City and go back home and live on my mom's couch. Like that's what it was. You just have to I took that leap of faith. So, I opened up in January of 2015. Yep. I had no idea how it was going to work, but I just did something really interesting, I think, just before I decided to sign the lease, because I negotiated with the landlord. I said, listen, I'm going to give you 6 months up front. I don't really have a strong credit score, but here's 6 months worth of rent up front on top of all of the other fees, right? If you give me 6 months, I promise you that if you can take this off the market for a few weeks before we sign, that's it. Just take it off the market for a few weeks. I went in, took fire photos of the raw space, made a fake Craigslist account for the space, and I got enough bites on it to justify opening it up, right? And people were willing to spend like $2,000 a day. And
I mean, it was a beautiful space. It was gorgeous. I
know, with the glass
and the brick
door.
wall.
And can you share a little bit about the first year? How hard was it?
Oh my God.
So running events. What do we think of event rentals?
Did you pick up?
Well, I mean,
right, because let's go back to the model, right? Because a lot of this is we are a social enterprise, so we are not a nonprofit. We fund our own selves. We basically subsidize our own selves, and that came from you being like, okay, well, this person wants to spend $2,000 for this event for maybe 12 hours in the space. Okay, great. If they do that, then I'm only this much X more till I hit my rent. And then I got rent paid for the whole month.
I mean, listen, I wasn't in a position at that time where my freelance career was bringing $3,000 worth of profit, because that's how much that rent was.
Yeah.
Okay. So I knew that if I was going to get this to work, I need to have the cost of the studio covered.
Yeah.
If I could get the cost of the studio covered, all of a sudden the line item of renting space was now going to go back into my pocket. And that money was money for growth. That money was to be able to invest back into myself, right? And so the lowest hanging fruit were events. I mean, it's Bushwick. Come on. It's 2 a.m. parties. There's burners taking over my space. People are peeing in the hallway. I'm in way over my head.
You got a call when you were in Paris.
No,
from
I
the
was,
police.
Oh my God. I was overseas on for work or for vacation or something like that. And yeah, I trusted this neighbor of mine who was a host for parties. I get a call from my landlord literally of him literally saying, he goes, somebody's peeing in the sink on your floor. If you don't get back here, I'm kicking you out. You know, I mean, it was crazy. Like, I don't know. I mean, you do it because you're so excited about the money that's going to bring you, but you don't, people are assholes. Like, I thought I did a good job. You know, I was like, I got a security deposit from the guy. And then I'm like, Daryl, these are burners. They literally like have so much money. Like they go to Burning Man every year. They spend $100,000 on installation for funsies. You know what I'm saying? A $2,000 security deposit is worth this man to pee in the fucking sink, right? So, I would say that the first year was just the best, hardest learning experience of my entire life. I mean, I was on a personal level going through a lot. You know, I like I said, at the beginning, I got a history of depression. Like I've been trying to figure out that pathway for a long time. And, you know, I won't digress too much, but being able, when you struggle, I think personally to care about yourself and find self-love, there's something so powerful about having something outside of yourself to care, that you care about more than you. And it made me show up every single day, and it made me have something greater than myself. So once I realized that I was making enough money to be able to support myself, I wanted to start sharing it with other people. But also, that's what the business plan was. It wasn't to be able to make a shit ton of money from throwing parties. Yeah. You know, it was about, how do I make enough money to cover this place so that I can actually start making art? And so once I switched the model and decided to invite artists to use the space exclusively as for photo shoots, I came up with something that I think is what we really call now a membership program. Right? So I put an ad out on the Listings Project, which is like a monthly newsletter. And I was like, all right, I'm going to find 10 artists who can spend $300 each a month to be able to have unlimited access to this space, right? I'm not shooting there every day. I need it, like 3-4 times out of the month for my paid shoots. And then in between that, like when I can get time in to actually shoot my own things. Yeah. So that's when I started sharing it with other members and other photographers. And cut to 5 years later, we're no longer just 10 members. I think we're about 70 members now. Yeah. It's kind of crazy.
And that membership model is now the residency.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think like what I discovered was a self-sustaining ecosystem, right? All of a sudden, now instead of renting to just some random strangers who were going to destroy the place, I had about 10 to 20 different people who were rotating monthly to be able to have unlimited access to this space. They were able to make more of a living because they weren't spending $900 a day to have access to a studio and equipment, right? But I still had a main revenue stream that was covering the cost of my operations. I didn't want to make a profit on my fellow artists. Yeah. You know, that wasn't the point. I just wanted to be able to
cover rent,
you know? So that has always been sort of like a nonprofit relationship. Yeah. But the cool thing is I think the profit that I was making now from having the cost of the space covered was going right back into my own self. It was investing into classes. It was investing into equipment, right? It was expanding to other clientele. Yeah. And cut to 5 years later, my little itty bitty freelance career, because it all of a sudden has this funding, this profit, is now actually a full blown video and photo production company. Yeah. Right? Now, I think the genius thing that we're seeing now is that the completion of that ecosystem happens when the production company starts hiring out our members. Exactly. People who I have built relationships with over the last 5 years, who I've seen struggle, who I love deeply, who I also want to see succeed. It is so satisfying not only to feed myself and my loved ones, but it's amazing to be able to also feed everybody else in the community. Yeah.
So you've told us a little bit about kind of like how each piece of the model has like grown kind of organically, right? Like the production company on one hand, the membership. And then can we talk about some of the resources that we have at Holyrad and kind of how those have evolved? Like, so you're there with people in the space, right? And we have
in year
like
one,
in year one, and you're seeing what's happening. I mean, where we are today, we have like fully fledged out programs. Like our editorial program.
So
is
how did
like,
we get there, basically?
Yeah, how did we get there?
Yeah, because like I said, like my university plan didn't have like all of this vision. Like so much of what has unfolded before us is honestly just maintaining the same system in which I learned everything, which is that doesn't work. Let's change it. Let's see what works, right? So the first year that I had this sort of membership program where we had those like 10 to 20 artists like, you know, renting out on a monthly basis, I noticed that there were other things that were missing, you know, and they would come to me with ideas. Hey, have you ever thought about actually just like getting the group of us together and seeing if we can have a little bit of a portfolio review? And I was like, oh, sure, great. I can organize that. I actually need it too. Awesome. Let's do that. You know? And so that repeated over and over and over again for 5 years. All you have to do to run a good business is listen to the people around you who need it most. I just think that the secret weapon is that I was the one who needed this resource the most. And so when something is created by the person who needs it, it really creates something that will inevitably work. You know, I think that's also sometimes why like I lament about the whole charitable structure of like, I'm gonna make millions and millions and billions of dollars raping and pillaging the world for its resources, and then once I have the money, that's when I will give back. But I'll give it back to these huge institutions, right? I'll give it back to these huge institutions,
which are part of the problem. Right? To be able to give money to people so that they don't learn, but they're reliant upon something. And I'm not sweeping all charities on the rug. First of all, I don't know enough about it to really like do that, but also I think it's just simply the mistakes are so valuable. And I think that I have benefited from a life where I learned that at an early age. And so now the programs that we have are, I mean, I'm so proud of them, and I am so happy that we're able to offer them. And it's because as we've gained more members and we've gained more renters of the studio as a studio space, and we've gained more clientele, everybody, all of these revenue streams are slowly coming up together, and we can put that money right back in to what makes this so special, right? We can hire more teachers to teach programs. We can hire more consultants to consult our members. We can bring in more equipment for our members to have. And so the reason why I think the membership program is so special is because it's coming from somebody who went through the same struggle. And I think the beautiful thing about where we're at now is that we're recognizing the same struggle that I went through as a photographer is pretty much the same struggle that every entrepreneur goes through. And the moment I recognized that being a photographer, being an artist also made me an entrepreneur, even if that was like a little bit of like letting go of the stigma that a starving artist is authentic and that I'm not sellable. And I'm sorry, I gotta keep my lights on. You know, I gotta make a living. Art is labor. So the programs now really are just like a finely tuned reaction to the needs of the people in our community. And we just know how to listen, I think.
I think a really good example is actually our office hours, because I know that those were born out of residents who were shooting in the space and then decided to just pop into the office and say hi after their shoot because they were really going through it, and they're talking to someone else who's really gone through it. And so being able to relate, being able to ask for advice suddenly actually just turned into an office hour.
And how useful it was to have somebody else there to just be like, oh my God, I understand. And like, but also, okay, like your feelings are valid.
But also operationally, and this is a little bit more on the personal side of running a business, is that you got to set boundaries. And like, there definitely has been moments where the work that I wanted to do and the time that I wanted to give to our members, to give them my full attention when they came in, they're like, I haven't gotten paid for 6 months by this person, but like, I don't have any resources. How do I do that? And me just being able to be like, wow, I really know what that feels like. I want to give my time to you.
Copy that I use
to get my money.
And so it really is just about like, okay, in order for me to maintain that, I've just got to systemize it. I've got to put some operations around it, because I can't be on call at 24/7 or otherwise the reason for why I started this, which was so that I could be an artist that was living and surviving and thriving in New York City, it will go out the door. And so learning boundaries, but also needing boundaries as a human being is, I think, what taught me all about good business operations, you know? So I think the programs now are great, but I also know that they're always going to change and they're always going to get better because that's just how we work. It's just what we do.
No, they're getting better every day. I mean, even just hearing how people are using the programs or how one of our members in the editorial doesn't actually want it to be in print and wants it to be in this show and how it can move between our programs or something that came from a sponsorship is going to, and just seeing how people are using it is actually to me so exciting because that's where the new ideas come from.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, well, I guess you can do that and that and that.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden you're a music video director.
No, I know. I mean, there's never a boring day here because we're always learning from each other and from our mistakes, but most importantly from our community. And I'm really grateful. But
so how has Holyrad overall, like 5 years later, like affected you personally? Like I know that you talking about how it helped you get up every day, but kind of looking back now, like.
Oh God. I get emotional. How has it affected me looking 5 years back? How fast it went by and how slow it went by at the same time. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe that's just like more like, I don't know, philosophical commentary on time, but
or just living in New York.
Living in New York, right. I have easily packed in decades worth of mistakes and growth into a very efficient 5 years. And it was hard. And I wanted to quit so many times.
Yes, I can attest to that. How many phone calls I got. And I'm being like, no. Don't get a van and move to New Zealand. Not yet. Literally. The hours of like pros and cons of like, does it make sense to keep it going? Is this really what I want? I mean, those are other conversations that I remember quite vividly as well, because I was there, hearing it is hard.
And I think you tried to convince yourself that you wanted to sort of finish Holyrad. I remember you showing up to lunch with my mom and giving us a pitch for an hour about why you were not going to continue Holyrad. And then like 2 months later, you were in Clinton Hill. I was like, oh, so I guess that didn't happen.
Yeah. But I think that looking back on it now, you never do anything alone. And so for me, it's about incredible gratitude for people in my life, right? Especially the bad ones. Yeah. So it's weird. Like I'm being interviewed and hosting at the same time. We're coming up at like the end of our little conversation here. I just want to ask you guys, I mean, is there anything else that you feel like people need to know about me? Like,
I was actually going to ask to wrap up, like, is there more to the vision that you see for the future? Like
good
we've,
question.
Yeah, so much has been achieved.
Yeah.
How could the vision keep growing over the next 5 years?
Well, I think that the first phase of all of this has been about my success story of struggling as an artist and then becoming a full-fledged production studio, which is what I've always dreamed from a very early childhood. That's my vision that I had. But now, and that's something that I want to continue to pass on to every single member that walks through these doors, is I want to be able to say, look at what this space did for me. Let's do it for you too. But I think the next phase, Sas, is really about finding the other studio owners, space owners, community activists, and saying, hey, listen, I think I got a business model that could make you money and allow you to do good at the same time. And I think that's the next phase. Is I want to share this quote unquote IP, right? Knowledge for knowledge's sake is what?
Narcissistic.
Yes, ma'am. So now it's about getting out there, doing things like this, and answering the questions that, and sharing the conversations that we have here. So I'm really excited, and I'm just so thankful.
The future is bright.
Yeah.
Okay, so that is all the time we have for today.
Yeah. I hope you liked it.
You want to close it out, Daryl?
Yeah. So we're going to be doing these guys seasonally, and we're going to roll them out once a month. Next episode, I'm really excited. We're going to be interviewing Elena Franco right here. And I'm so excited for us to just share a little bit about this. And I'm scared to come off narcissistic because we all know that this space is oversaturated. But, come in, hang out with us, and hopefully it'll resonate with you. So thanks again, you guys. We'll see you next time.
Bye.